Let's return to AUKUS and take a look at what's been a very significant, historic announcement this morning. Joining me now for his analysis, Head of Peter Jennings Strategy Consultants, Peter Jennings. Let's just start with the nitty-gritty. Any surprises for you today from this announcement, Peter?
Well, maybe not today, but in the last couple of days, the really, I think, genius part of this announcement has been the 3 to 5 Virginia attack submarines we're going to get within the decade. It may be remembered that Peter Dutton was talking about as Defence Minister and since as opposition leader. But I think that frankly saves the government's bacon from just presenting, a project that's going to deliver in 20 years' time. And for that to happen, of course, the Americans have had to rethink their own production and what they need. But I think that's the most significant part of today's formal announcements.
You're right to point out Peter Dutton. Even a couple of weeks ago on my show, we talked about when the discussion was we were just going to get the British Astute class submarine. He kept pushing hard for Virginia. He was talked down about that. I do note a bit of irony today. There's a lot in the media, the Fairfax media in particular, who are crowing over this announcement, great move by Albanese. But of course, they were very critical of Scott Morrison when he decided to go down the AUKUS path and rightly dump the French submarine. I mean, you and I both worked around Canberra. It is incredibly difficult to have pulled off what's been pulled off today, to get 3 countries, 2 of which have changed government or at least changed prime ministers, to get them all to agree to this, and for us to also get a US nuclear a nuclear asset in the mix. It's a big deal, isn't it?
It's huge. Scott Morrison did 3 things. He broke through something which everyone thought was impossible, which was to persuade the Americans to allow us to have nuclear propulsion technology. Secondly, he carried the opprobrium of cancelling the French contract, which frankly this government would have to do if it was going to proceed down this track. And his government also made it possible to get the Americans to bring forward the Virginia-class boats. The key point here is that for a project as long-lived as this one is going to be, we're going to see governments change on a number of occasions, Peter. Both governments have to own the success of this. And I hope that really does incline, Mr Albanese and his team not to crow too much about it. They're building on the foundations of what Scott Morrison actually delivered. And they'll hand over to a Liberal government some stage in the future. Of that you can be certain. So every government, every side of politics has to own some part of the success of AUKUS.
I'd love to see the government now establish an oversight committee and include perhaps a couple of former prime ministers on it from the left and the right, just to shepherd this thing through, because it will live a lot longer than this government. And I think that it needs to be owned by both sides of politics, and it needs to be, I guess, honoured all the way through the transition and not used to play politics. What was interesting today, Rishi Sunak particularly, made a commitment in relation to GDP. We know the Australians have too, and the US as well. That would have been helpful to hear in this announcement.
Yes, I think so. And as I can't quite make out the figures that the government has released about expense. I think for some reason they're now trying to make it look minimal. But what I can tell you is that there is no way we're going to deliver this project without getting our own defence spending up to 2.5% of gross domestic product, if not more. And let's not forget, we're a few weeks away from the Stephen Smith Angus Houston review, which is also going to announce, I think, a whole heap of new equipment acquisitions as well. So the defence budget is on the climb. No bad thing, Peter, because frankly we've been underspending on defence for decades, really riding on the coattails of America providing security in the Indo-Pacific. And that's just not going to happen anymore. AUKUS is about 3 nations and their effort, and let's add in Japan and India, and it's that collective effort which is going to be the thing that deters China at the end of the day.
I remember when my old boss, before he got into office in 2013, wanted to see 2% of GDP on defence spending, and a lot on the left side of politics called him a warmonger. That is absolutely necessary where we sit now. Just on the Virginia class, let me throw something out there. we're getting these Virginia class. I know Richard Marles calls them in-service submarines, meaning they're second-hand submarines, but these things have a long shelf life. We're getting them around 2030. Why wouldn't we just stick with this type of sub all the way through? Otherwise, we're going to have the Collins class passing out, we've got the Virginia class coming in, and then we're going to have this Astute build down the track. 3 different boats. That's a bit complex. Why not just keep the Virginia?
Very good question, Peter, and I reckon this is going to be part of the debate we'll be having for quite some time now. 10 years of successful service with the Virginia class, that's what we need. The Americans are going to continue to build this boat. They're going to update the design and modernise it as we go through. Why wouldn't we stick with success? I guess the quick answer to that is the British want to deal themselves into this game somehow. But I wouldn't be surprised if that part of the plan is going to come under even closer scrutiny. And if we can make things work well with the Virginia class, why not stick with success? I agree with you. This is a discussion we'll be having for years to come.